Passion Time. I'm here with author, professor, editor Gisela Heffes. It's great to have you here with us. Gisela Heffes is an associate professor at Rice University with the Latin American Literature and Culture program. But she's a very avid writer, nonfiction, and she's also written some fiction novels as well. Today we're going to talk about a fiction novel, but it's a little bit based on her life. It is called Sophie La Belle and the Miniature Cities. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Patricia.
But before we start, I want to ask you the question everybody asks, which is, what is your passion and how did you find your passion? How are you living your passion? Three questions in one.
I guess I always like to write and I always like to read, so I consider myself a big reader and a big writer. And since I am very young, I used to be very curious about the world, and I like arts, and I was very privileged that I was able to pursue that and continue that passion, but I was very perseverant. So I think like if you like something, you have to
stick with it.
Yep.
Right?
And you have to go all the way through, and you have to make sure that you follow your passion to the end, because then you turn to be a happy person.
Exactly. Now, Sophie La Belle is one of your many novels, and you wrote it when you were living in Paris studying, because she does have a degree from University of Buenos Aires and also a PhD from Yale. But before that, she lived in Paris for a couple of years, or a year, and you picked on something as you were living in the 20th arrondissement in Paris. Tell me a little bit about this novel and how it came about.
Well, it's a very funny story. I was a grad student with my husband. We were working on our dissertation, which in my case was on imaginary cities.
Oh.
So the role of the city was playing a big impact on my
life.
On my life, because I was in a city on my dissertation project, but also in my fiction writing.
Right.
And as I was there, I was noticing that Paris was a beautiful city to walk, very exquisite, full of enchantment.
That's wonderful.
And little alleys and places that you just go through, and then you find these surprising boutiques with extravagant and extremely precious hidden treasures. And I was really in love with the city, but I also noticed that there is a big amount of people that are not part of that dynamic. These are a lot of the immigrants that you don't get to see when you are navigating the city. And I was thinking about this character that all in the sudden she's like the prototype of the French academic who loves to travel around, to discover the world, but also sustains a lot of, I would say, sustains an exotic perspective on worlds that, underdeveloped worlds, or worlds that are not they're outside of the Western scope. And I was wondering what will happen to this character if all in the sudden she encounters these characters that are not part of her world, the real ones. And I started to develop that story, and that's how I, turned out to. Yeah, I came up with a short. It's a long short story, or like a novella.
But I think the story, and by the way, the book is in Spanish and English, and she has drawings. I'm going to ask her about her drawings. The book is quite philosophical in a way. You're trying to get a message across. Sophie La Belle lives in a city that supposedly is westernized and very developed, but she's surrounded by other cities that are not so developed. But there are some conflicts and some reasoning behind that. So if you could share the philosophy behind the story of Sophie La Belle, because even towards the end of the story, she starts losing her name.
Yeah.
And I want to know what that represents as well.
Yeah. So my idea is that what I think and what I felt when I was in Paris again is that you have these very developed cities like Paris or London or Rome.
Yeah, major cities, yeah.
They're beautiful, but what is the cost? What is the condition of possibility for those places? And since I myself, I come from Argentina, Buenos Aires, which is a very nice globalized city, but it's also different in the sense that it's more heterogeneous. And I know that, that there is exploitation of resources, and not everything in Latin America or Africa or Asia is, like in Europe.
Right.
And my idea was that one city like Paris or Rome or London are beautiful, but also they are the counterface of other places.
Right.
So these other places are, to some extent, the condition of possibility, in the way that to be one of the nicest or most precious places in the world, there is a cost, and the cost is to marginalize other people. If you remember in the story, there are illegal immigrants, but they are in the rural areas.
Right.
They're not allowed to come in. It's a little bit of a dystopia in that
Right.
sense. Also, there is this multimedia house where all the citizens of this continental city have to attend, which is a house where they embrace a tone, which is what you're supposed to say and what you cannot say.
Right.
So it's within
authoritarian kind of
authoritarian, but also within the framework of political correctness. Things can be said, but not fully. So it's a place that there's a lot of regulations in order to maintain that sort of utopia that at the end turns out to be something different, when you finish the story. And she, by being in contact with these characters throughout the story, she starts to lose her identity.
Okay, that's when she starts losing her name.
Yeah, so her name is part of her identity, Sophie La Belle,
Right.
the beauty. And she doesn't know where she is, who she is. She starts being filled by the smells and the presence of people that they are like the undesired, and that they are even not allowed to be there. That's why she ends how she ends, and I don't want to reveal the end.
But the story. But it's sort of, it seems like sort of a modern existence in what happens when you're living in a really nice situation and there are people in the suburbs or not that far away from you living in a completely different life experience.
Exactly. Yeah, you can think about the continental city in the story as a gated community.
Right.
Where you are.
Where everything's perfect.
Everything is perfect. The grass is perfectly cut. There is not like a single bag of trash on the floor. But then sometimes these gated communities are embedded in areas that are very poor, right. And the people that are outside are not allowed to come in. Right. There are checkpoints, and you need to get an invitation. So it's almost like, I would say, kind of like a metaphor of this fragmented world and society, where there are spaces that are perfectly nice and places that surround these beautiful utopias and they are dwelling in degradation and poverty and inequality and environmental also contamination and it's really, the contrast is very rough.
Why do you think people should read this book? By the way, it's a very entertaining book. It's very interesting. It's surprising. You're always running into surprises with this book.
Well, I think if you read the book, you will be more alert about your surroundings. You will be more alert about the type of society you live. I teach classes on cities, and I always tell my students that a city, like David Harvey will put it, is a place where you define the type of society you want to have. So a space, like an urban space, is not disconnected. It's not just a shape or a form, that you design. Is in interaction with social ties, and when you decide which type of urban place you want to create for your family, for your people, then you're thinking, well, which type of social interaction I want to.
Be more aware of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Sophie La Belle and the Miniature Cities, both in Spanish and English. You can find it online. It's great to have you, Gisela Heffes, with us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, and we'll see you next time on Path.